You are listening to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast, your one-stop shop for the outstanding, the unconventional, and the downright strange. Strap in because the boys are about to take a wild ride. I'm Funk Master B, setting up that tea for the duo of dumb foolery. Your hosts, Dan and Lee.
Of course I believe in aliens. I mean, in an infinitely growing universe, why would we be the only living species? Bigfoot, Nessie, all that stuff, it's gotta be real. How are we to say that we're the only ones? It's just ignorant. I think aliens are not only from other planets, but they're time travelers.
Welcome, listeners, to the Beyond State of Fear crossover debate on the Bob Lazar story. This is your moderator and host, Dan Martson. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Beyond Terrestrial podcast, and I will be setting aside my opinions today. Since I'm a former Jeopardy champion, I can do this sort of thing, and I will be moderating the debate. And with us are a bunch of hosts and guest hosts from Beyond Terrestrial and State of Fear. Let's go around the horn. Let's start with Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Good, man. This is Chris Doblet from State of Fear. Doing good. Looking forward to this little friendly debate. I think it should be less of a shit show than the first presidential debate, but I'm not quite sure.
Who knows? It could get off the rails. If I have to, I will mute people. I will mute you bastards. All right. So
okay.
There you go, man.
All right. Joining him is my co-host from Beyond Terrestrial, Mr. Lee Arrett. Lee, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dan. As always, I'm coming from the Haunted Barn Studios. I'm excited to get this started. I'm about to take this shit off the rails.
Oh, okay. Coming in as he always does, trying to take some wheels off here. Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome.
Now, on the I guess opposing side, or I mean, we're not really being too antagonistic about this debate. On the other side, we have Mr. James Bishop. James, how's it going?
Hey, man, I'm all right. How you guys doing this evening?
Really good. Love the old school Astro shirt, my man.
Yep, thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting in over my head here tonight. I'm going to be the rookie of the class, but that's all right. I'll take
that's
it.
all right. But you know how the government is always doing people dirty. So
the government. Yep, that's right.
So you'll be in there on that side. And joining him is one of the founders of the Beyond Terrestrial podcast, a true believer, Mr. Mike Roop.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Mike
Happy
is
to be here
in Las Vegas at the Simple Equations Media Studios. He is as
I'm just in my garage right now.
Oh,
actually.
well, part-time studios.
But I'm close to it.
Yeah.
So
So he is like the closest to the Lazar story physically of the group.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, just down the road.
Credit to him. This is in large part his idea. So props to you, Mike.
Good for him.
Yeah, I couldn't handle. I edit the Beyond Terrestrial podcast, and I had to sit and listen to an ear lashing of bashing Bob Lazar for a couple hours while I edited these guys' voices, and I was like, I got to get back at this. So just putting shame on this man's name. Somebody's got to put some respect on there.
Yes, I know. Well, so I think we'll actually start with you, Mike, and James, since you guys are. Since we want your take. You have the fresh take, especially with James just learning about the story. So I guess the synopsis of the Bob Lazar story for the listeners who don't know, Lazar came out in the late 80s, as like 89, in an interview with George Knapp, and claimed that he had worked at Area 51 at a location called Site 4 and that he worked on the power systems and propulsion of UFOs, and that he saw multiple UFOs at his time there, and did a lot of secret work for the government. So lots of information besides that that he has put out over the years. But that is the bare bones version of the story. Can we all agree?
Yeah.
Agree.
I disagree,
Okay.
damn it. No,
Already starting early, James.
I
Damn
just
it,
got to
man.
start it early. No, absolutely.
Trying to
I'm
get that
on board with that
debate
100%.
So I guess to establish our positions here, Mike, let's start with you. How much of Bob's story are we to believe?
Man, that's such a tricky question. I think he was mostly telling the truth. I'm not going to die on a cross for him, you know what I mean?
Okay, fair.
But I think just based on his ability to talk about technologies that were not a thing, and to have that validated, for one, is a major kind of point in his favor, and just the in-depth knowledge that he has supposedly of these systems. And yeah, you could say in X-Files, nature, I want to believe,
Okay.
So I'll put it this way, like, I believe most of it because I think it's possible. Also,
Right.
Am I hoping? Is it kind of like, is it me hoping that it's all real? Probably a little bit, but he does have good science that backs him up, and
Yes.
it's hard
And
to
that's-
discount that.
Yeah, this is one of the very interesting things about Lazar's story. He talks about things that are very scientific, like element 115.
Yeah.
He has some kind of technical background, and he's very convincing when he talks about it. When you see him on. So, James, you're kind of teamed up with Mike tonight. What's your position? How much of Bob's story do you believe? Do you think the government's out to get him? What's going on?
Well, myself being a conspiracy theorist as well, I always think the government's out to get people, period.
Hell yeah.
Anybody that tries to get ahead knows too much. They always take it on the chin. Listening to the man talk, I tried to be objective. He spoke clearly. He didn't stammer over his story. He looked right into the camera. He was looking right at the people he was talking to. I am inclined to believe almost everything that man said in this documentary. He even got emotional. He got angry. Even got disconcerting. He's like, hey, look, you can believe me or you don't. I'm just trying to get this out here. If you don't want to believe my story, that's fine. He's not looking to get paid, obviously. He's not looking for attention. So to me, that's a little strange for somebody who's trying to, lie and put out a bullshit story. He wants to be honest and just spit out his story. So, yeah, long story short, I'm inclined to believe what I saw.
Okay, so James, your entry point to this story was the Jeremy Corbell documentary, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers.
Yes.
It's on Netflix. Just since that is your entry point. There are interviews and stories going all the way back to the 80s. What did you think about this? Your first impression. This film.
Well, the narration drove me nuts. I think I told y'all that already. But, I know, and the thing is, I'm not familiar with that gentleman's work too much, but when it comes to documentaries, I don't need all the fluff and all the diagrams and all the graphics and stuff like that. I like to get to the story.
It's
and stuff
Corbell.
Like that. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I don't know about the guy sitting on the counter flipping through pages, talking on a cell phone to some guy, but
That's Corbell.
Right.
but as it, but
So the the part that connected to you was the parts where Bob was on screen
Yes.
telling his story.
Absolutely. I liked
Yes.
when they were talking to him and he was actually telling his story. I really dug it.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Chris, for you probably had some familiarity with the Lazar story before the documentary. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah.
So where do you stand? You're kind of on the opposing side. What do you think of the Lazar story?
Well, I mean, initially when I first learned about it back in the 90s, fully on board, totally believable. And of course, that was a time when the internet wasn't around, and so it made following up on his information a lot more difficult to do. Now, however, I definitely think that he is a disinformation agent put out there to spread disinformation, and that for me that has been even more. I don't say proven, but more reinforced by the likes of people like Philip Imbrogno and what's that dude's name? The guy that was featured on the Mirage Men documentary. Paul, what's his face? Paul Benowitz.
Yeah, Benowitz.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fact that there are, I mean, Imbrogno wasn't disinformation, but the dude just straight up lied about his credentials for years and wrote books and stuff. But Benowitz was in fact an actual disinformation agent. So I feel like Lazar is playing the long con and doing the same thing.
Intriguing. So, this is one of the weird things about UFOs and UFO culture is the cons, because there's plenty of them out there. And a lot of them want to present themselves as having, some kind of special knowledge, whether it is scientific or spiritual, because there is that weird new agey religion crossover into UFOs.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. For me at least, Bob has not pushed that line.
Right.
So I think that's one thing in his credit. See, this is me, the moderator, giving my opinions, which I shouldn't be.
That's a negative.
It's like a real debate.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
So, but no. So if Bob is a disinformation agent, is this something he's doing on his own, or is he being put up to it? Your thoughts, real quick, Chris.
No. So what I think, and of course, it's totally coming up my ass, but I think he's the other side of the spectrum of Paul Benowitz, whereas Paul went in full balls. I mean, balls deep in it and just fully went on it. I think Lazar is playing it a bit, I don't want to say safer, but he's playing it a bit back more for that reason. I think the government instilled both of these individuals in two different types of disinformation paths, because at some point they realize one of them is going to be found out, so they have to have a backup. So
very intriguing.
I mean, there's probably more out there that we won't find out till later on, but yeah. So I think he's just playing a different path, different role than the other guy did.
Very cool. So Lee, we talked about the Bob Lazar documentary in a whole show. Just to remind our listeners or our friends from State of Fear, what are your thoughts on the Bob Lazar story? How much of it should we believe?
So my issue is I believe that he either believes that it is true or is a very good actor, because I'm with James on that front. He does appear to be being truthful when he's doing this interview. But I can't bring myself to believe that everything he says is 100% true. Just so many potential discrepancies. The erasure of his credentials. the lack of credentials, but somehow he gets brought aboard. Some of those things just seem very strange to me. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I believe he believes a lot of it's true. Now, does that mean that the government didn't?
It's contagious.
the government didn't go ahead and create a farce for him to feel like he's doing something. I don't know. Like I
It's kind of like they faked the moon landing, so they faked Area 51 for Bob Lazar.
Well, see. Okay, so listen here. You know damn well that they hired Stanley Kubrick to do that. They hired Stanley Kubrick,
right.
and he
Lord, here we go.
refused. He absolutely refused to do that anywhere but on the moon. So they had to go to the moon.
That's right.
He's such a damn
Right,
perfectionist, isn't he?
He is. He's hardcore. All right, so Lee touched on it. Mike, James, if you guys would like to discuss some of the points of evidence that you think lend Bob some credibility, what parts of the story
May I?
do you think was that, Lee?
I have one thing to say.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to believe that Donald Trump's going to deposit $1 million into my bank account tomorrow afternoon. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. So just going to throw that out there. Mike, that was a jab at you from earlier, but that I love
I'm
you,
fully
bro.
aware of that. Yeah.
You want to believe. Wow. Okay. See, now this, I'm going to reprimand you as the moderator here.
Yes.
We were moving on, and you had to go back and try and get in a dig. So I'm not very appreciative right now. This is your first warning.
Where's that mute button? Hit the mute button.
All right, Lee. Since you attacked me so early, I guess I'll start here.
What parts of the story? And James, go ahead and feel free to add in any evidence that you think lends credibility to Bob's story.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I would say is you talked about how he doesn't have essentially the credentials to get the clearances and things that he has, but I think that he does. You know, I mean, if we take his story as true, he did study at MIT, he did study at Caltech, he did work at Los Alamos.
Yes.
And the guy is a genius. So I think that he comes very highly regarded in the eyes of the government as far as them, in his words, maybe trying to find somebody with a different perspective and maybe to think outside of the box a little bit.
Yep.
Because they were at a complete standstill with this propulsion technology, which you can understand why, because it's, you know, inverting gravity to move through space. So, I mean, you know, they're at a complete standstill. They need somebody that's a weirdo. They need somebody who thinks differently.
Yeah, and the way he explained the technology, put his hands on it, he drew it. He says, this is how this works, this is how this works. He explained the bending light technology. He talked right through it. It didn't sound faked. It didn't sound fabricated. Also, when it comes to the credentials, the point that he was making on the credentials, the government can erase somebody completely off the planet. So that's,
100%.
you know, that would not be uncommon for somebody who works at a high-tech facility like that to have their past erased. I mean, for God's sakes, they have him listed as going to a junior college, and that's all there is on his education that I could find. You know, like I say, because they can't find his credentials. Well, that stuff can be erased, you know, easily, especially in nowadays. A long time ago, there were more paper trails and stuff like that. He talked about how he had thousands of videotapes they couldn't find. Then we see he gets hit by the FBI raids. Obviously, this guy knew something. They thought he had something. You know, I think, you know, when they spoke of him actually escaping the lab with some of this element 115, he's able to fabricate it, you know, because I did read where they were able to duplicate this this element But the problem is, as soon as they tried to expose it or use it, it would evaporate. They couldn't stabilize it. So
decay in like
Yeah.
a millisecond.
Milliseconds, yeah, it would
it's
shut
just-
down
it's not
milliseconds.
stable.
But
Convenient.
Well, that doesn't necessarily discount it, though. That doesn't necessarily discount it. Just
Yeah.
because we haven't figured out a way to make it stable doesn't mean that there
Yeah.
isn't a way to make it stable.
yeah,
We just haven't
Okay,
figured it
yes.
out yet.
Let's discuss element 115 a little bit here. I, as the moderator, I think I want to inform our listeners about element 115 a little bit. Now, Bob says that element 115 is the power source for the alien craft. That's what makes it go. It is like a small piece of it, like tetrahedral shaped, is placed into the reactor, which is essentially a table or something in the middle of the UFO, covered in a half dome of metal, and that's what makes it work. We have since when Bob came out with his story in the 80s, element 115 had been hypothesized. People knew like there was an empty space for it on the periodic table. People thought that it could come about. And since then, in the 2000s, they were able to synthesize it. But the way they do it is they just like use a particle accelerator to mash atoms together. And these atoms have a very short half-life. Like 115's half-life is like 0.62 seconds, and then it breaks down.
Yep.
Much like my sex life.
Hey!
When you're lucky.
Look, I gave you one warning before, but that one was good, so I take your warning back.
Oh, nice.
So no, these atoms, they get really big. And
Much like my sex
gravity
life.
can't hold them together. And you know, the nucleus of an atom is all filled with protons and neutrons. The protons, they're all positively charged. They repel each other. The atom's too big for the strong nuclear force to hold it together. Is it possible that it could be stabilized? Maybe, but we don't know how to do that yet. So,
and there was also mention of an antimatter engine that ran in concert with this thing. And antimatter is actually possible now, but unfortunately it takes an enormous amount of time to generate just molecules of the stuff because we don't have the technology to make it any faster, but it is possible. So antimatter does exist, so I don't see why they couldn't have that as well.
okay, very good. Mike, any other points about 115 or elements of Lazar's story that you found highly credible, points in his favor?
God, the element 115 is so huge because he literally was talking about this before it was synthesized. That's a big deal, you know, like that is a really big deal. I think it's one of the most important parts of this whole story. But like you say, it had been hypothesized, so maybe, that's a pretty big leap of faith to take in the 80s, to be like, oh, like as if, what kind of foresight would he have to think, oh, I'm going to be validated by saying, oh, it's this random hypothesized element. That's a pretty big jump for somebody to just hope it happens.
Yeah.
And maybe if he had a little bit deeper knowledge of it, that would suggest that he was in these deeper levels of the government and, their testing, even if it hadn't been synthesized yet, but he knew it was going to be, say he's lying. It still suggests that he's in pretty deep if he knows that they're on track of doing that. He made a joke that he had a particle accelerator in his living room. I'm pretty sure the particle accelerator they used to synthesize element 115 was like 2 miles long or something. So, I believe it was the one. What was it? Was it CERN where they did that at?
No, I believe it was actually discovered in Russia. It's named Moscovium on the on the periodic table.
Okay, so I'm wrong. Yeah,
So,
either way.
And the fact, and like I said, and the fact that he, this, I don't know where people stand on these things, but he took 4 polygraphs, passed every time.
Yeah.
And another opinion that he shared that is something I feel very deeply, and I've discussed it with Chris many times on State of Fear, is I don't feel the government has the right to keep this kind of information from the public. Could they handle it? That I don't know, but the fact that they think they have the authority to just do whatever they want and keep things from us, I think is absolutely wrong. So I really,
totally agree
I
with that.
loved,
I agree
I
with
loved
that,
his
too.
opinion on that, and I thought that was wonderful.
Very good. Well, Chris and Lee, let me throw it to you guys. What elements of Bob's story or investigations into Bob, whatever, lend you or bring you to believe that he's not as credible as Mike and James might think?
Real quick, I just want to, Lee, I want to clear some up. So, were you saying that you believe that Bob Lazar is an unwilling participant in disinformation by the government?
Yeah, that's what I kind of believe. If not unwilling, not fully knowledgeable about the entirety
In the dark about
of
it.
the plan.
Yeah, that's what I was getting from your breakdown, and I'm kind of with you on that. I think that which is I think part of the reason why he sounds so genuine, that he fully believes that Saul is real, but he is probably in the dark as to what they're doing as far as using him to get disinformation out to people. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm totally with you on that, Lee.
Okay.
So,
So Lee, what parts of the Bob Lazar story that have come out in all these intervening years would make you believe that this is not, factual? The Site 4, the Element 115, all the stuff that he's talking about. What evidence would you point to?
well, I have a hard time with that because there is a lot of evidence that suggests that something did happen, and that's why I lean towards the unwilling disinformation agent. He was raided by the FBI for some reason. He was seen being dropped off at Caltech and I think MIT as well, or dropped off and picked up by a witness that was able to corroborate those pieces of evidence. My issue is if he was truly in the know, I think that he would have I hate to say it, but if he's leaking information that they don't want out, why don't they just Epstein him?
I generally have to agree with that. That is true.
So
Well, I think that was the whole entire point. I think that was George Knapp's entire point when he was coming out. He's like, you need to come out and say this or they're going to kill you. So it's like he came out saying, guess what? This is what I'm saying. So if he was to die at that point, somebody who's just have a strange, mysterious car crash, like we've seen a bunch of times, it's too obvious at that point. They have to keep him around at this point. It's too much. He's divulged too much. Mm-hmm. They all know. Everybody knows. So if he goes up missing or he just ends up in a strange, mysterious death, then we know he got Epstein at that point.
See, that's what I was going to say real quick. I was sorry to cut in, but yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. If he knows all this, he did film this documentary, and he says, well, why are you doing this? Insurance. He says, I'm doing this for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
He also probably, if he has this information, if he's smart, he's got like 30 or 40 people with copies of this information, confidants, people out there that if he gets offed or says if he mysteriously disappears, I need you to release this information. So he's got them too. And like I said, that's probably why he hasn't been deep sixed for talking. So
I was going to say, what else hasn't he put out there?
Yeah, because he has stuff that's he has stuff that he's keeping secret that he's given to 30 people, then it must be more quote unquote mind blowing than what he's released now. So just release it, because that's you've already released this much so far. Just go further and release it.
I'll tell you what. Like, to me, the only thing that would be so big that the government would be worried about getting out would be literally if he did have element 115 in his possession.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
If he did, then yeah, I can see them trying to keep him, from just releasing it, and I don't know, but
Okay, so Chris, let's just
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Chris.
Let's
You're
just
fine.
kind of assume that this is a lie, the Lazar story. What would lead you to believe that this is not factual?
Oh man, how much time do we got again? Because man, I got a list.
Let's hit the highlights.
Okay, well, first of all, yeah, let's to reiterate what Lee said. A blind participant to disinformation. They're leaking exactly what they want. If he actually had leaked anything substantial or something that was detrimental to national security, they would have Epsteined him. He's been working in fireworks for like the past decade. It'd be very easy for them to make it look like his shop exploded with him in it, and it would be just be a fireworks accident. Super simple.
Hell, they did that to one of the scientists from the Manhattan Project.
Right. So super simple. I mean, that's right there. Boom. If what he had released was substantial enough. Now, going back to his background, I'm in my office/studio. I'm looking to my right. On the wall, my wife has her 2 degrees, her bachelor's and her master's, up on the wall. There is not a single person that I know of who has at least 1 master's, let alone 2, who doesn't have a copy of their diploma on them anywhere. And yet, since the 90s, since the 80s, Bob Lazar has not produced a single picture or photocopy of his master's degrees that he claims to have from MIT or Caltech. Not a single one. Now, also, he claimed to have gotten been at MIT around 1982, I believe. Yeah, 82. However, he was also featured in a magazine called Jet Car Story about his famous jet car, whatever, in June of 82. Around the same time, and he was living in Los Alamos at that time. Around the same time, he claimed on 2 occasions to have been going to MIT to get his master's. Also, he filed for bankruptcy in July of 86. Information from that bankruptcy claimed he had only lived in Los Alamos for the past 6 years. Again, around the time he was supposed to be at MIT getting his master's degree. Neither George Knapp nor Stanton Friedman could find any information on him in Caltech's database or MIT's database. And I know James touched on that, and it's been mentioned in the documentary that the government can, erase that information. But these are private institutions. So unless the government paid somebody to come in the 80s to do a war game style hack and enter their systems to remove his degrees, I don't see that happening.
Well, quickly, not to interrupt you, they did do it to Ted Kaczynski at Harvard. That is a specific thing that did happen, the Unabomber. They expunged all of his records from Harvard, so it's not like it's impossible.
But did they expunge it after he was captured or before?
I don't know. I'm not for sure.
If they did it after, I would understand, because they want to distance himself from him.
Well, I imagine it would have to be after. I mean, they wouldn't just expunge him for no reason.
Then Harvard would be a willing participant in that. They want to separate themselves.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, but why wouldn't MIT and Caltech want to be like distance themselves from this weirdo that came out and said he was working on alien craft? That's kind of
Harvard expunged his record, meaning he had a record at Harvard. MIT and Caltech couldn't find anything on him at all. There was no record to expunge. It's that plus, just several other and going on now. I do think he has a very knowledgeable scientific background. He knows this stuff. With regards to element 115, I do want to point to maybe that being, again, something that the government gave him to leak out And then later on, when it came about, it's like, oh, okay, this is a real thing to help build the story up. It kind of reminds me of Betty and Barney Hill. When they were abducted, she had this star map that she drew from memory that nobody knew about until like decades later. They were able to find that constellation in the sky, but it was given to her by an outside force. So maybe Element 115 is a sort of similar thing where they gave it to Bob in order to help sell his story as sort of more a smokescreen for what's really going on.
Okay. Now, Chris, you touched on this a little bit about the journalists who have gotten into the Bob Lazar story, notably George Knapp, who broke the story. What does the credibility of these figures like Knapp and Corbell and Friedman lend any credibility to Bob, or does it detract from Bob's credibility? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Corbell, just no. Just because, just okay. Flat out no, in my opinion.
But he
Knapp,
wants
I mean,
to weaponize your curiosity, Chris.
Such a hipster thing to say. But
it should be weaponized. Hey, give the guy a break here.
I think Knapp kind of does, because I believe he comes from a place where he genuinely wants to get this information out and find out what's going on. Friedman's actually a nuclear physicist. He's not a journalist. So for him to be a physicist and actually believe in, UFOs, and take a interest in this, and for him to go out and try to find corroboration for Lazar's story and not find it, to me, that lends credence to the fact that it's made up.
Mm-hmm. Mike, James, what do you think? What do you think about these like national UFO figures? Really quick, does it add to Bob's story or maybe take something away?
Personally, I think it any sensationalizing, I think, always takes away, from somebody's true story. When they overblow it, they overdo it. Like I said, this documentary I saw didn't need all that fluff and, and him doing those deep voice narrations between the scenes and stuff. I didn't need all that.
That was Mickey
not
Rourke.
In this particular case. I mean, it has its time and place, but all I know is I want a majestic security clearance too. I don't even know what the hell that is, but I remember him mentioning that. And, and there's one other quick thing I wanted to throw in. But like I said, as far as credibility is concerned, I think just tell it straight up. These national figures, like I think we know one. Everybody know Nick Redfern, good guy, level-headed UFO guy. He doesn't seem to do any disservice to the field. But yeah, I tend to, should I say, filter the BS when I'm watching these things, and I try to just absorb the facts and not the fluff. So yeah, I would say takes away, but his credibility for me stands up. I also wanted to mention one other thing real quick. I don't know how you guys stand on this, but I did read a little bit about how he had read documentation on how the Earth was involved for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings. Grays from there was another system, Zeta Reticuli, I think it's called.
Reticuli.
Yeah.
And they said they can no longer find that planet. So I'm wondering if, because the reason we are visited by aliens so often is their planet may have been destroyed. I don't know, that's kind of off topic, but it's just the fact that he talked about all this stuff. I just found it amazing. I thought it was very cool.
All right. Now, so Mike, really quick, national UFO figures, Jeremy Corbell, the documentary, all this stuff that swirls around Bob. Is that a positive or a negative for you?
I think it's mostly negative. I think the only guy that people should really, give him credit for being involved with is probably George Knapp, because George Knapp, and he's whatever. He's like a fringe kind of investigator. He does weird things, but he is a legitimate
A classically trained
guy.
journalist.
Yeah, he's a very classically trained, legitimate journalist. And he's not gonna ruin his credibility over something he thinks is fake. Mm-hmm. So he did put him through the ringer, you know.
Right, and at least did put out the problems with the story. You know, that they could not find any of these credentials. Bob
for
talked
sure.
about.
Exactly. Yeah, he didn't cherry pick it. You know, he did say there are certain breaks in the story,
Okay.
which I'm fine, fair enough. You know what I mean? But I think that having these other guys like Corbell, I mean, like, he's funny to listen to. I listen to him on podcasts and kind of laugh at him because he's kind of a weirdo. But I'm not, you know, he makes, you know, cool Instagram posts and stuff sometimes too. So, you know, I leave it at that though.
Yeah.
He's
right.
not a credible, you know, type of guy to me. But, you know.
So let's flip it onto the doubters a little bit. Chris and Lee, assume that Bob did work at S4. If you are the Men in Black or some other agency, the FBI, whatever black branch of the government you want to talk about, how do you handle Bob Lazar?
You want to go first, Lee?
Yeah. So I think when you're dealing with somebody that is extremely intelligent but potentially not quite 100% ready for the real world, I guess would be the best way to do it. I think that they staged a lot of stuff. I know that theoretically, like staging an actual UFO that he could put his hands on, well, let's assume he exaggerates that point, and they bring him just schematics, and they bring him a piece of the element 115, stuff that they can get into his hands that he can see, touch, feel. He did admit that they kept him fairly compartmentalized. There were people working on the avionics, there were people working on different sections, and he only got bits and pieces. So theoretically, that means he's not even on the ship. He's only getting bits and pieces of this information. He's a very intelligent person. Maybe he was able to bring something about it, like, and create this narrative that this exists. There's a fine line between intelligence and insanity. And you take one step in the wrong direction, if you don't have the proper ability, a very intelligent person without the ability to objectively assess situations is a very bad thing to have, but it's also very easy to control.
Yeah.
So
that's a good
intriguing.
point.
Chris, would you think the government should be hands off with Lazar, or you know, if he actually worked at Area 51, what would you assume they would do if he was going to come forward?
I would assume they would not hands off, maybe hands off, but they would definitely do it from a distance, because I mean, they're probably, if it's legit, they're probably looking at what happened in Roswell and how much they jacked up that cover up, and so they're going to go at it from a different way, knowing that the public doesn't always take claims of UFO encounters, UFO in general, seriously. That and the fact that he came out, like I said, in 89. Here we are, 2021. And maybe you guys can correct me on this, but since then there hasn't been a single other, because he's lived this long from when he first came out. He's been alive this long with literally the same information he's had for the last 30, 40 years. Like, his information hasn't included anything additional because he worked there for a very short time by his admission. But since then, not a single other employee who worked in that area has come forth, whether of that time period or after that time period, to say that, to collaborate anything at all that he said. And then I just started thinking about people like Snowden, who also was a whistleblower, but it wasn't UFO related, but it was legitimate information. And he ended up having to leave to Russia to avoid getting arrested. Well, if Bob Lazar's information is as groundbreaking as what Snowden released, how is he still walking around a free man in the United States of America? So I think that they saw an opportunity and they let him go and slowly kind of let him do what he did, knowing that the information he had, as kind of Lee said, wasn't the full picture because they were compartmentalized. And so what he had wasn't enough to bring down national security or UFO, agreement, the convention agreement with the UFOs and Eisenhower and all that stuff. So they weren't even worried about it.
Intriguing. Now, for the believers, let's flip it on you guys, Mike and James. I guess assume Bob is lying. Why would he tell this story?
Well, if he is quote unquote, okay, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to be simple. If he is lying about this, he did a damn good job. I mean, yes, there are good liars out there. I get it. Were we present for this stuff? No. There are things we have to take on faith. I know it's hard for some people that need hardcore proof for everything. But if he is actually lying, then it was just done for entertainment, then damn him for being that way. But honestly speaking, Lazar or no Bob Lazar, I believe in UFOs, period. I know they exist. I don't need to have one in my face to know they exist. There's just been too many things, too many sightings, too much evidence, and they blow it off. But anyway, that's my stand on it. If he's lying, no, I don't even know how to articulate it. Like I said, if he's lying, I didn't see it. I did not see it. I couldn't detect it. And anything he said or did, I thought he was legit.
So, Mike, assume Bob is lying. What about this story would? Now I just flubbed the line. So, Mike,
why would he lie? Why
would Bob lie about this? What is the point of this if it's all fake?
I don't know. Because he doesn't appear to be the guy that wants to be this guy. He doesn't want to be famous for this, and he could be feeding us a line to make it seem like, oh, I'm not the guy. Don't to make so he doesn't appear like a disinformation agent. Completely possible, but he wants to live a normal life. He wants to do his normal things. I just don't. I don't see for everything that he said over the years. I don't see why he would want to lie about this, because he doesn't want the attention for it. He really does not want to be known as this guy. Now, assuming he's just saying that to keep the heat off, I mean, who wouldn't want to be the guy that told everybody that aliens really exist and we have spacecraft, that we're working on, and the government knows about it? Who wouldn't want to be that guy? That'd be amazing.
Yes.
But he doesn't appear to want to be that guy.
That is a very good point. Yeah, because I forgot to actually mention that myself, that he did say flat out, I don't want nothing to do with this. He said he was almost being interviewed at gunpoint, it seemed. It's kind of strange.
Lee, Chris, any thoughts on why this might be faked?
I actually have some thoughts. So this is, semi-anecdotal evidence, and it's actually a completely different person. But I met a guy once that could tell a story like no other. This man was a Marine sniper, Army Ranger, several different other pieces of the armed forces, supposedly. He only slept 4 hours a night, and he would go hunting for wolves up in... So what I'm trying to say is he always had a different story, a more grandiose way that he became... but he could tell me this straight-faced, convincing, like he believed everything he was saying. And it was over the top to a point that was just kind of crazy. And I once witnessed him speaking to another former person in the military, and that person started asking him some questions because they had been nearby, and you could tell that his house of cards was kind of unraveling. And he got so upset about it, but it was like he couldn't believe that he was not correct. Not that he well, okay. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. He could not believe that he was not, no, I'm not going to say it. Could not believe he was not right. And with that being said, when you have people that lie about everything that they do, they create these worlds in their head that they believe. That's what a pathological liar is. And if you have somebody like that, if the government wants to kind of steer...
The government
wants to kind of steer you in a direction that makes you... or that gets information that they want to control out while steering people away from another part, I think it's completely plausible. And that's the real thing that gets me is I know this person, and he was so convincing in his stories. He would have a person hanging. I knew he was making all these things up, and I was still hanging on his every word. So it's just... you can have those people that are that convincing, and they don't even realize that they are.
I don't think that's Bob's disposition, though. I really don't. Like, I don't think that's, like there are compulsive liars and everything out there. Totally, we've all met them. That doesn't appear to be his disposition. He doesn't care if you don't believe him. And if someone questions his science, he has... he can respond to those. It's not his house of cards doesn't fall, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, and I mean, Bob took people out, and they videotaped UFOs over Area 51. So he did have some folks to corroborate his story with. But who knows what they were watching out at these test sites in Nevada?
Well, once again, if we go with my theory on that. I'm not saying that he never was there, and I'm not saying that he didn't see strange things.
Oh,
I'm saying that the information that they gave him, it's a secret test facility. Yes, if they're flying planes that are new technology over that secret test facility, you're going to see something that to us looks like a UFO. I'm also not disagreeing that the government doesn't have UFOs in their possession. My disagreement is whether or not his information is correct, and I think that he's an extremely intelligent person and definitely used by the government. I just don't think he was used by the government in the way that some people think. I think he was used. He was used, not used.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw one quick point in, too. He did manage to drag a journalist along for 30 years. This guy was interested in his story for over 30 years, been following his story. If the guy was full of crap, I don't think anybody'd spend 3 decades of their lives researching and following a guy. That's all I'm going to say,
Yeah, that's a long time. It's been out there for a while, so it's one of those stories that is very persistent in the UFO culture. Guys, we are pushing 1 hour right now, so I have one more question. We are going to go around the horn here. We're going to start with you, Chris. This is the final question.
All
What evidence, if any, would lead you to switch sides to fully go in for Lazar's story?
Oh, man, I don't know, because I mean, he can draw schematics and drawings of the aircraft or the UFOs all live long day. You know, it's not going to prove anything to me because, you know, artists do that for a living. You know, they create their own UFOs and spaceships just for fun and for a job. So it would have to either be a picture of him either at the facility with a badge on, or a picture of the aircraft or the UFO that he saw, authenticated, of course, which back then, you know, there was no Photoshop, so it'd been a lot harder to do that. Or, you know, if he was able to sneak out something a bit more tangible, maybe like a piece of, like, you know, the I-beam or the unbendable aluminum foil that they quote unquote recovered from Roswell, something that, you know, is a physical object that is not like anything we had at that current time when he first released it. To me, that would be the end all be all for, okay, this man is telling the truth about his story.
Mike, same question to you, man. What evidence would lead you to switch, to flop on Bob Lazar?
I guess the biggest pull that I have for him lying is the idea of him just being a deliberate disinformation agent. Because this has happened. This is not a new thing. You know, disinformation agents have existed for a long time. Provocateurs, you know, whatever you want to call them. So I think if there was something to prove that he was, as Lee said, used by the government, but wasn't used by the government, you know, he was merely a pawn in this game. You know, I would like to see some actual evidence.
You mispronounced
of that,
government.
you know.
Yep.
Oh, government. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
It won't happen again.
So very interesting. Very interesting.
I guess,
Lee,
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yep.
What do you think, my man? What would get you to go all in on Bob Lazar, to buy in?
I think if he did have stable element 115 and presented that, and it exhibited some of the properties that he claimed it did, yeah, I'd be 100% in. It's something he could have snuck out. It's something that essentially corroborates his story. And it does explain that element 115 can be held in a stable form. And if that's the case, then yeah, because it's outside of our technology ability right now.
Mm-hmm. So, James, you're the newbie. You get the final word. What would get you to sell out Bob Lazar?
If his identity was called into question. For one thing, when they first interviewed him, I know he lied and said his name was Dennis and all this stuff. If his true identity could be debunked, I would flip on him, knowing it was BS. Because what he presented, in my opinion, was believable. I didn't find it over sensationalized. Like I said, he was very relaxed with his presentation. He didn't sit there and try to ram it down your throat. He wasn't desperate, grabbing you by the collar and saying, "Please believe me." He basically told me, "Hey, look, this is what happened. You can believe me or you can take a walk." So it would take a little bit for me to flip on him, but yeah, his identity, I know his credentials are called into question, stuff like that. If they could prove that to me, that he actually didn't go to these schools and he is just some agent of, some BS agent, then that would cause me to flip. More along his personal identification, his personal credentials, not what he was talking about.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, that is all the questions that I've prepared for our debate. We're We're just a little over an hour, so we've done really good time wise.
Hey Dan.
Yeah.
So can I? Because I know I think we pretty well know your stance on this. I know you kind of don't really believe Bob's story. So what would? Same question goes to you, I guess. What would it take for you?
What would it take for me
to buy into his story?
So either the proof of the aliens, little green men, ships, whatever. You know what? Even the ships. Like I said, I believe in one of the stories he said he saw an alien. So if I saw an alien, I'd believe that shit too. I'd be all in. Now the 115, that's a very central part to the story. That would obviously prove what he has to say. But why does he keep it secret? If the government already has it, what's the point of keeping it secret?
Government.
You're not protecting anybody. He says accidents had already occurred at Site 4 with this 115. So like what's the point in holding on to it? I'm not entirely sure. What do I think I'm gonna give you my 2 cents worth as the moderator before I shut this down. I think Bob Lazar probably made the whole thing up in an effort to save his marriage or cover up that he was going out with escorts or something like that. Like, oh, honey, why'd you have to go out at 11:30 at night? Oh, babe, I got called into work. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Working for the secret government.
Yeah, he did talk about that, how his schedule was crazy random.
Yeah, weird.
He was living in Vegas at the time.
And he wasn't converting with escorts. He was working for them as their bookkeeper, okay?
He was pimp.
Right.
No, gentlemen. He was pimping the hose.
Yes, legally in Nevada.
Can you imagine Bob with his glasses and everything as a pimp?
Oh God.
Man,
giant purple
he's just
hat,
all
and
nerdy.
everything.
He's like
his
he's
pimp
like,
cane.
now,
his pimp cane better
now-
have the sport model UFO on top of it.
no
Sport model
sugar.
UFO.
No sugar. Papa Bob is gonna need
Real
his
low
money,
profile.
or else he's gonna have to cut a bitch.
He gonna hand him a little E115. Say, hey, go bend some light, baby. Go bend some
No,
light.
I'm convinced it's all made up because he lived a crazy life. His wife was cheating on him. He says the government had their phones tapped and everything. Like, why would they not know he's gonna come forward with this story?
Right.
I think if he had worked there and was planning on coming forward, he never would have come forward. They would have known, and he would be gone. So.
What if
You can use a payphone. You know what I mean? You can use a payphone. You can walk down to the
at least back then, yeah, you could, yeah.
grocery store. Yeah, you know.
Again, I think, and also the way he talks about it, like how compartmentalized this is.
That's a scapegoat option for him.
Yeah, like, oh, they couldn't move forward and they needed me to come in. You would think if the government had this technology, they would have a bunch. The government would have the best people working on it. I mean, I know they suck at a lot of things, but just the way he talked about the structure of S4 didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I have a theory on that real quick. I do have a theory on that.
Okay, go for it.
Compartmentalization, because I used to be a government employee, or at least when I worked for the military, but I know about compartmentalization. No one person would ever know the entire part, because if they got out with the entire story, all the information and all the know-how, they'd be a very dangerous person. Somebody with only a piece of the puzzle can't blow the project. That's my theory on that.
Okay, well, here's another one
issue.
for you.
Yeah.
Okay, if they're going to compartmentalize it this way, why did he even know that there were more spaceships?
Well, because
he glanced.
Why
he
wouldn't
saw
they
them.
give him one UFO?
He saw
to
them
work
as
on?
like it was an accident. A hangar door was open. He happened to just glance and he saw them. He wasn't working on them. He was just working on the single thing. So I realize that's like a likely story type of situation. But that's
I just find it as much information as he has. And again, parts about the aliens and how these ships are, some of them are archaeological. Just a lot of these details of the stories don't lend themselves to the compartmentalization that he talked about. So I'm highly doubtful that the government, if they had UFOs, would work in the fashion that Bob describes.
And I want to add, if he did make it up, he's obviously intelligent and has some sort of background in science. There's a very good chance he's a sociopath. Now, polygraphs don't detect lies; they detect your belief in what you're telling the person giving the test.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So if he's a sociopath, he totally believes everything that he is in his brain and what he's telling people. Sociopaths are actually really good at passing lie detector tests, because what they are telling people is the truth in quote unquote their world. So if that's the case, and that's what it is, he just so believes in what he's telling you that to him it's true. It may not be true, which also may explain why after 30, 40 years, he's so able to stick with it. And he's pretty much just built, like you said, built this whole world for himself. I also want to add, I just realized, I think Element 115 is just a nickname for his pimp hand.
Look out.
I do
That's got
shape
the
up or
power
I hit
right
you with
there.
the old 115 again.
I do have one more thing that I'd like to bring up as well.
It'll lift you right up off the ground. That's that anti-gravity.
Damn.
That's what it is, the anti-gravity.
Okay. I have one more thing to bring up. The majestic clearance. I love the imagery that creates, but it also links something for me. The so-called Majestic 12.
Yeah.
Really? Like, they're going to call it Majestic Clearance? And if he has Majestic Clearance, how is he not privy to more information? You're saying that the Majestic 12, like supposedly the highest people in the form of the UFO decorum at the government level, decided to name their highest level clearance Majestic level. I think that there's.
Well, I think that's just one name for it. I think it's the same thing as a Q clearance, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the same exact clearance as a Q clearance.
Or it's what the government just gives these random names to this clearance that they supposedly give a poor soul that they're about to screw with.
Yeah.
We did Lee, you might recall Project Azorian was called Jennifer for a long time because Jennifer was actually the name of the security system that they used, and people thought that that was it, but the project was actually called Azorian. People mess these sorts of things up every now and then in the government. We've seen that. So like I said, I'm just out on Lazar. I think he has made a bit of a living off of this. I mean, guys like George Knapp definitely do. This is their job. And yeah, they go, oh, I'm just presenting this information and, here's X, Y, and Z. But I mean, they make a pretty tidy living off of what they do.
I don't think that Bob has taken any money off of it, though. I mean, he doesn't claim to. I mean, you never know. There could be some under-the-table business going on. Knapp gives him a little bit of extra cheese underneath the table.
Yeah, well, I know Netflix didn't pay Corbell in peanuts for the documentary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
For sure.
there
I'm sure
are
Corbell
guys
gave him some money
making
to appear
off
as
of
well.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Apparently he's taken zero money. It seems hard to believe.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So there's money floating around there. Money doesn't always muddy the waters in these stories, but there's just so much about Bob that I'm already leaning out on that the money just pushes me all the way out. So that's just my take. And guys, before we go, we need to do some plugs.
Some pimping?
Yes, get that money. Get that money. So James, I know you always plug in State of Fear over on that show. Tell us about State of Fear and where people can hear it.
All right. State of Fear is a podcast for all the strange and weird things. We actually go state by state studying weird and odd occurrences, cryptids, ghosts, you name it, we go after it. We've done it all. Missing persons, the whole spectrum. We do weird news. We talk about the states, famous people from the states. We have a lot of fun. We also try to feature either a local band or a personal story at the end of the episode. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I hate social media with a passion, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we also have a Patreon as well. So, speaking of pimping,
we're also on YouTube as well. So
that's true. We do have
we
do have a YouTube channel.
Wherever fine podcasts can be listened to. Oh yeah, YouTube. Yeah, that's right. The Beyond Terrestrial YouTube channel is up. I think we've got one follower, and I'm pretty sure it's me.
Now you got two, because I'm gonna go follow right now.
That's right.
Okay.
I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna do it myself.
Lee, tell the people about Beyond Terrestrial.
All right, Beyond Terrestrial is a podcast that covers the strange, the macabre, the conspiratorial, and all things supernatural. We come to you from Tennessee / Mississippi / sometimes in Nevada. Actually, all the time in Nevada because he does the editing, so you're welcome. Well, thank you, Mike.
It's a national act.
Yes. No. Hey, go. Oh no, keep going. I'm sorry, I cut you off on a plug for our own show. Continue.
No, that's okay. So you can find us on wherever you find podcasts, just like State of Fear podcast. You can also find us on beyondterrestrial.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at BeyondTPod. And soon coming, our OnlyFans. Just for Dan, he's gonna.
Yeah,
he's launching an OnlyFans for the podcast.
Look out! I've got this Chewbacca mask, very kinky.
Oh yeah.
Dan, if I don't see
Nothing but the
if I don't
mask.
see an alien gray dildo on your OnlyFans, I'm not going to subscribe.
Now, Mike. Before we get around to Chris, tell the people just a little bit about Simple Equations Media, because Lee touched on it, so I want you to tell them about it.
Yeah, sure. So, Simple Equations Media is a full-service audio and video production company. We specialize in anything from TV to films to music videos to post-production audio, editing, recording bands. We do just about everything. And we're located here in Las Vegas. You can find us on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, simpleequationsmedia.com. So we're out there. Do basically
cool.
basically everything you need. And if I could, I am actually getting ready to launch my own podcast that I would like to introduce, I guess.
Yeah, tell the people.
Yeah. I guess this is the first public release of the show, but it's very unlike Beyond Terrestrial or State of Fear. It's more along the lines of, it's an interview based show where I interview creative people, musicians, artists, filmmakers, and just inspiring people, entrepreneurs, that type of thing, and just dive real deep into the creative process, the inspiration behind the work that they do, and just to get a little bit deeper look into the artist's mind.
Yeah, very cool.
So that's called the Artisan's Musing. So that's going to be launching in March.
Excellent.
So
very cool. We'll keep an eye out, and we will definitely plug that on all of our media for you, Mike, when that drops.
Very cool.
thank you very much.
No problem. Simple I just want to touch on Simple Equations. We love you guys. We love Mike helping us out with the show. But it's a really cool spot you're in. Your boss or co-worker, the owner of Simple Equations, Jay, is on Ghost Adventures. So it's really cool for us who are into weird stuff, and it's also great for creative people or folks who are trying to do audio, video, who need professional help. I mean, you guys
Exactly.
Do it all. Jay touched on some of his work that he's done in our Demon House show. So just awesome to have you guys on board. Love
appreciate it.
talking with you, Mike. Now, Chris, there is a sister podcast to State of Fear. Tell the people about What the Suck.
It is actually our first podcast. We started it last year or year before? I think it was
About a year and a half, brother. Yeah, it's been a while.
So it's in season 3 now. So it is a show built around James and I and myself, or James and me, whatever the proper pronunciation is, proper grammar is, love of crappy horror movies. And these are movies that you find, you used to find a dime a dozen in the bargain bins at like stores and dollar stores and Walmarts. Now there are a dime a dozen on Amazon Prime, as well as like places like Tubi. But so James and I, every week we find a crappy movie, we watch it, and then we assign it a rating of 1 to 5 shit emojis. 1 being the best, 5 being horrible. But we wanted to do a show for all the forgotten or not known about horror movies out there. So it's going on, like I said, season 3 right now. It's our baby. It's our first one. And you can also find it anywhere. You can find podcasts as well as it has a YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. So if you like crappy horror movies to be exact, or if you're debating on watching it and you're not sure whether it's for you, just go check out our show. We probably have watched already, and you can listen to our review and then decide for yourself if you want to waste an hour of your life that way.
This is very true. Oh, and I have two words. I have 2 words from my man Dan. Rescue titties.
Say again, James. You froze.
Did I? Let me say it one more time.
That's okay. It probably came through good on your audio.
Yeah, it probably did. Rescue titties, my brother. Rescue titties, man.
Oh, okay.
Rescue
That's
titties,
what it was.
yes.
Hey.
Rescue titties are important.
makes any movie better.
But
No,
do
I do
you guys
also-
ever worry
also,
that you're going to run out of material to watch?
No.
Hell no.
They'll never run out. There's so much good stuff.
No.
Are you kidding
Let
me?
me
There's a
tell
lot of
you.
bad movies out there.
Oh, God.
I actually.
Well, guys, I hope sometime in the post-COVID world to join you in a viewing for What the Suck. Like that is one of my on my to-do list in any visit to the Houston metro area.
Fantastic.
So,
Absolutely.
it has been awesome talking with y'all. This closes out the Beyond State of Fear Bob Lazar crossover debate. I've been Dan Martson, and we've been it's been awesome to thank you for listening to us. That's what I'm going to say.
Keep it in, Mike. Keep
God,
it in.
I can't.
That was
I cannot
good. That was
finish
good.
it.
It's not with my
It is way too
115.
late.
I'm not
No.
cutting
There's
a
one thing
single
we
bit of that.
forgot to cover. Mike,
What's up?
What?
let's talk
Yeah, I know. I wore my S4
your
cape today.
S4 cape.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good symbol.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of like the N7 from what video game?
Mass
Nice
Effect.
logo on that.
Mass
yes.
Effect. Very reminiscent of that. It's a great cape. I like it.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Well, guys, keep your eyes out there for more tales from Beyond Terrestrial and maybe more capes.
Ooh.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Terrestrial, all 3 of y'all. If you're still a fan of this show, follow Beyond Terrestrial on social media and join the Beyonders Facebook group for even more strangeness. Links to everything, including previous episodes, are available at beyondterrestrial.com. That's the place to go for stickers, merch, show swag, and our Patreon. Patrons get exclusive access to ad-free shows, giveaways, and the unedited after-show show. Anything you give to the show goes straight to Funk Master B's bachelor pad, which for now is also where these jive turkeys record this show. This show was edited by Simple Equations Media with music by Mike Root. Dan and Lee will be back next Tuesday with more from Beyond Terrestrial.